This is Paul Brinkhurst from FutureWorks. We're continuing with our instructional videos on ReSET. In this one, we're going to look at how you do self and staff assessments. So we've already set up the time points, so the assessments are ready to go. If I log in and I go to employees, I can see that video 2 has an active assessment for supervisors because the text has changed here and it says fill in a supervisor assessment. Also, I will have received an email telling me that video 2 needs to have their assessment done. So all I have to do is come in here and click on fill in as a video assessment. It'll take me to the page. There's a lot of information on this page. Any notes that I put in about this employee for this assessment are going to be here. My notes, notes from other individuals. I can also add a note at this stage, which will be stored in the note page. I've got my skill definition and exemplars and some scoring instructions, but it's really very simple. In this case, this is part of an engagement program. So I'm being asked to give my opinion on how engaged the individual is based on my observations. It's probably a little unusual that you do supervisor assessments on engagement because an engagement program is actually more about the individual employee's feeling of engagement. But nevertheless, we'll continue. So all I have to do is decide what I'm going to score from 1 to 6, with 6 being very high, 1 being low. So I just move the blue cursor to the appropriate score, save and continue. Next one, save and continue. Okay, if I'm doing a skill assessment, then again, much more likely that you're going to be doing this. You want to make sure that you're reflecting your notes and you're thinking like an employer, right? So what would an employer score the person for that skill? How are they demonstrating that they have that skill? Save and continue, so forth, and until. Oh, by the way, if I back out, if I quit before I finished, then it'll tell me finish your supervisor assessment, and I can go back in and do the last one. Okay. So there's that one completed. Now, we also know that the employee has to do their self-assessment. So I'm just going to log out and pretend that I'm the employee. So here I am. I'm going to log in as video 2. And I click on self-assessment. And it says start the form. Now, the type of form will vary depending on the type of assessment. So in this case, this particular program has the same kind of short assessment that the staff do. So I would just continue like this. Okay. If they were doing the long assessment, then there'd be a series of questions here, which they have to answer, and they would answer it for both. Okay, there we go, finished. Okay, I'm going to log back in quickly as the case manager. Let's have a look. Let's see. Well, just going to manage time points. And I can see that at the moment, the self-assessments are, video 1 has a self-assessment due. Okay, so let's go back out. Let's log out here. And let's log in as video 1. And we'll have a look at this kind of self-assessment. Start the form. So here we have a series of questions. Okay, this one is a skills assessment. And the questions are asking them to consider this statement and then decide whether it applies to them or how it applies to them at work and not at work. So I prepare myself carefully for things I have to do at work. I'm going to say usually, not at work, sometimes. The reason we have both of these is because this is a self-awareness exercise. It's a reflection, self-reflection. So we want them to try and think about how their work practices differ from their the skills that they have at home or not at work. We want them to also realize that their behaviors can shift and change depending on their environment, which is important because this is all about them figuring out different behaviors to use in the workplace. So we just continue like this, right? And they just continue. Notice that some of these are positive in orientation and some, like this one, are negative in orientation. So the person has to be careful. They can't just say always, 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 because always for a negative one is not good. So generally speaking, if you're using this kind of assessment, you probably would be with them to start with, make sure they understand what they're doing, encourage them to avoid never and always, except if they're really sure that that is the right score for them, and away they go. When they finish, it'll give them a message saying they're done. And that's how the self-assessment process works for them. Let's log out.